Today we're having our parish assembly, and had been hoping to put together some wonderful, meaningful sermon in preparation of that, but life happens, and I didn't get to do that. So my wife said, just come out and say, God loves you, amen, and get on with the liturgy. I'll do a little bit more than that, but it's not going to be much better, honestly. We have these two pairs of readings today. One is for this Sunday, and the other is because we're commemorating the wonderful Archmaster St. John Chrysostom. And they really present a wonderful providential lining up together, especially the Gospels. In the Gospels, you're being told the story of good and faithful servants versus the wicked and lazy servants. And in the story of the Good Shepherd, you're being told the story of the good shepherd versus the wicked hireling, right, who cares not and runs away when danger comes. So you see kind of the parallels between these two. And so first let's talk about the stewards of the talents, because we've been talking a lot about stewardship, about what it means to be responsible for the gifts that God has given us. All the gifts, our past, our relationships, our present experiences, the things we have, the jobs we do. You know, this is all part of what it means to be a steward in the sense of a Christian stewardship. It's not just a fancy word that churches use when it's time to ask you for money. Okay, stewardship is actually a calling that Christians have, because it's an old-fashioned word, but it really means caretaker. Adam and Eve were created in the garden, and God gave them the garden to take care of it, to have dominion over the earth, to be responsible for it. Not to be lazy with it, not to be irresponsible with it, but to be wise stewards. That's what that is. And we continue this in our life as Christians. And so the wise servants receive the gifts that their master gives them and turn around and double what they've been given. That's a pretty good return on an investment, isn't it? Right? If you could get that. And so the third servant is the one who's afraid. He's afraid of his master, and he doesn't want to get in trouble. He doesn't want to risk anything. So he just buries the talent in the ground and pretends he didn't have it. He doesn't take up the mantle of responsibility, because responsibility comes with risk. It comes with the chance that you might fail, with the chance that you might make mistakes. That's okay. God knew that when He gave it to you. He doesn't want you to shirk that responsibility, that possibility. He wants you to rise to that occasion, and He will help you and get you there. So what does the master say when he comes back and he finds, well, the two doubled his investment? Pretty good. They get a promotion. The third one, who didn't even try, seems like that was the good idea, but actually it was the worst of them all, right? He gets driven out, cast into the utter darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So really bad. And as I was reading this gospel, I was wondering, well, Jesus talks about you could have put the money in the bank and I would have gotten it back with interest. So I was wondering, what kind of interest rates did they have in the Roman Empire? Because they did actually start centralized banking in that time, and even though it was, which is not much to say, far less trustworthy than, say, our banking systems today, it still was functional. And banks might loan out to people at 10 or even 12% interest rate, which is pretty high. And it was capped, because that would be, beyond that would have been quite predatory, right? And so, let's say he gave it to the bank and he was able to invest it at even half of that, at 5%, and get back 5% interest. Well, he would have doubled that money in only 14 years. Assuming they discovered the miracle of compound interest. If not, 20 years. That's 5%. So even if it was at a measly 2%, which might be reasonable even in Roman times, he could have doubled his money in 35 to 50 years. And the gospel says the master went away and he didn't come back for a long time. That's an awful long time. So who knows? Had he just done one little thing consistently, responsibly, and carefully, He could have doubled it without much risk at all, and without much fear, but he was too afraid to even try. And I think that's a good message in there. Not that Jesus is that interested in the miracle of compound interest, though I think it's a great blessing. The message there is, if you've been given something, you don't have to, you may not be able to double the thing and make this incredible return on the gifts that God has given you. But if you do small little things consistently, over a long period of time, you will bear the fruit of it. And you will see that you have given back to God His many things. I think about this parable in particular as we go into our parish assembly, because this is kind of like the annual face the master of the feast. We face the music and say, okay, St. Mary's, how did you do over the last year? God gave you some gifts. What did you do with it? Did you make progress? Did you fulfill your mission? Did you accomplish the good deeds that you had set out to do? In some years, we're able to say, wow, it was a great year. We did this and this and this. And other years, yes, we did some. And other years, we're like, maybe not as much as we would have liked. And, you feel that. You go into that every year. And I think this year, we did some really good things, and we didn't get accomplished a lot of good things, too, that we wanted to accomplish. So it's always a mixed bag. It's always a mixed bag. But it's an important time for us as a community to ask ourselves, what are we doing with the gifts that God has given us? The fellowship that we have with each other, the generosity that you have shown to the church to make the mission grow and go. Are we doing the right things with it? It's challenging. How do you measure that? It's a challenge. We gained, I think 10 official voting members over the course of the year. We have many more new people in the church over the course of the last year who have not yet become formal members. But we also lost a lot of people who moved away. We had a lot of families move away in 2018 or at the end of 2017, so they're not in the list this year. So we actually had a net loss of membership. That makes you feel bad. It's only voting membership, right? It's not total souls ministered to. But at the same time, it's a sign that we've got to make sure we're doing those little things consistently and carefully and responsibly to continue to grow the church. So, and there's something you can do about that. I mean, people move away in this day and age. In a perfect age, we would have doubled the size of our congregation every 10 years, I think, with no problem, because we get that many new people every year. That's great. But we could do more. We could do a lot more. And that's something that is a responsibility of the whole congregation, working together to make that the case. Because whereas a lot of us might be saying, that's okay with me. I can't meet any more new people. My capacity for relationships has met its maximum. That's fine. Maybe you won't have meaningful relationships with every single person in the parish. I'm sure you already don't, to be honest. But we have a calling as Christians to share the good news and the good message of our faith, the beauty of our faith, the joy of our fellowship, the grace that God has poured out so richly upon us. It's something that's not meant to be kept for our own enjoyment. You can't hold on to it to keep it. The only way to save it is to give it away, if that makes any sense. That's how the gospel works. So we have this incredible opportunity to share orthodoxy to this American audience that we have, so to speak, to this Orthodox American secular culture or multi-denominational culture, and offer them an alternative, which is given to us by our Master and entrusted to us as an incredible treasure. So we do have that responsibility. So that goes, I'll say something about the second Gospels then. John 10, the Good Shepherd. Jesus is the Good Shepherd. He lays down his life for the sheep. He's not like the hireling who, when the wolves come, says, no thanks. I'm not going to risk my life for these sheep. I'm out of here. That's a wonderful message for us to remind us of the great pastors that we have had in the history of our church, like St. John Chrysostom, who was not afraid to suffer exile and eventually death in exile for his flock by not giving in to the wolves that were coming in and trying to tear his flock apart. And so, that's always a conviction personally for me as your pastor to make sure, which kind are you? Are you just a hireling, Father David, or are you seeking truly to live your life as the Good Shepherd, as God has called you to be? And again, on some days I'm better than others, right? I'm no saint yet. God help me. But we also, as a whole community, have this task. We are faced with the challenges of the world and the pressures that are coming upon us at all times. Are we communally pursuing the role of good shepherds, the good shepherds of the gifts we've been given, of the flock that we are a part of? Because we're actually responsible for one another too. If you come to the parish and you've become a voting member, at least, then hopefully you have this sense of responsibility that you are part of the shepherding of the flock of Christ by your role. You're not just one of the sheep. You're also part of that. And you do that in your own families, with your own family members. If you have children, you do it with your children. Sometimes you have to do it with your own parents. You have to be a pastoral figure to your family members. You do it to the people you come into contact with, to your friends. But do you do it with the people in your community? Do you take a sense of personal responsibility for their well-being? Or when things seem a little bit unpleasant or awkward or uncomfortable or difficult or whatever, do you say, no thanks, I didn't sign up for that? We're called to lay down our life for one another as well, as the Good Shepherd did for us. And that's a hard calling, because let's face it, most of us, well, why would I do that? Who are they to me? Well, if you're a true believer, they are your blood, your flesh of your flesh and bone of your bones. They are your brother and sister. They're closer to you than your own genetic relatives, because they share with you eternal relationship, immortal relationship in Christ. That's an incredible calling, an incredible treasure, an incredible stewardship. So may God bless you and keep you strong in your calling, that you may rise to it and not be afraid of the difficulty, the danger, the challenge, the fears that come with living in this world, because there are many. But God himself has shown us the better way. He's shown us the way of love, the way of forgiveness, the way of long-suffering and patience with each other, the way of the Good Shepherd. May Christ our God have mercy on us and save us. Amen.